Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
A man who I think should be president of the United States of America one day.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
How you feeling?
I feel good. Yeah, a couple days in the city.
Yeah.
It's for an Ohio boy, that's about my limit. I could do 2-3 days.
2-3 days and then back home.
I gotta get back home.
All right.
Tim, you just launched a new group called the We the People Group.
Yeah.
What is that? Talk to us about that.
So We the People's an issue advocacy organization. Mm-hmm. We are really want to be the home for the exhausted majority. I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but most people are just completely exhausted by the political conversation.
That's right.
And, just the last few months since I ran for Senate in Ohio in November, was unsuccessful. And I just keep meeting my friends. People are like, I don't even know if I'm going to vote anymore. Like, I'm just, no one's speaking to me. No one's talking. So we want to create an organization, We the People. You can go to wethepeople250.us to learn more about us. In celebration of the 250th anniversary of the United States. It's a minor miracle we've made it this far as a country, and we want to just make sure that we are preparing ourselves for the next 250 years, and that means ushering in an era of reform, responsibility. Government's not working for most people. The conversation sucks. And we want people to land with us, and then we're going to build this organization out and try to stitch this country back together.
What's the disconnect? What do you think the problem is? Why is a government letting down the people so much?
I think part of it is that everyone's, red shirt, blue shirt, and then the extremes on both sides drive most of the conversation, and no one's talking about solutions. So one of the things we want to do is highlight the really positive things that are working out there. So, and we're going to do really compelling content. Now, we will take on the anti-democratic forces in the country for sure, but we want to highlight the positive things that are going on. So, one of the issues I've worked on throughout my time in Congress is veteran suicides. Still almost 20 a day. We've not moved the needle on this at all. One of the things that's really helping move the needle on this is psilocybin. So
what is that?
It's mushrooms, basically.
Psychedelic drugs.
Psychedelic mushroom therapy. There's a group called MAPS. Rick Doblin has been running this for about 30 years. They've got a ton of research. It's working, but it doesn't get any oxygen because the drug companies, and we've had this conversation before, they suck all the oxygen out of the room. Toxic political conversation. So we want to do compelling content around this. Same thing around mental health, addiction. Cannabinoids, cannabis can be super helpful in when it's done properly to heal people from addiction. And a good friend of mine, Bernie Kosar, used to be the quarterback at the Browns back in the day when I was just a boy, went through a huge issue around addiction, healed himself basically through really kind of intense cannabinoid usage.
Weed. You gotta just say shrooms and weed.
Shrooms and weed, man.
Right. We all
keep it real. So yeah, but it's a real thick concentration of cannabis. It's not, you don't smoke it. It's like a really intense thing. But he healed himself on it.
Wow.
Now he's a huge advocate. Like he was football in the 80s, they were just peddling, painkillers like crazy, shots, pills. He said he'd walk into a locker room and they'd have a table full of just basically high dosage prescription drug painkillers. I want to highlight that. Mindfulness in the schools. There's a great group called Inner Explorer. They do, basically breathing techniques, meditation in schools. There's a school in Tampa. I'll send you guys the information. Like they zeroed out, people dropping out. Attendance is almost 100%. Kids are starting to pay attention because they're in trauma. I mean, I think across the board, basically, we have a lot of people in trauma. Right, their brain is in fight or flight mode. Right. There's got a lot of trauma. It could be violence. It could be this. It could be that. All kinds of different things. But we're not addressing the trauma. So we, the people, we want to highlight this stuff. We want to celebrate it. The people that are doing good shit, and make sure that people know about it, and then we could hopefully amplify it, get money behind it, and start shifting the country.
I was gonna ask. We reported a story this morning during a couple of days ago on Front Page News that said Ohio was the most stresses.
Cleveland was the most stress city.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, economics, poverty,
LeBron leaving.
We're still not over that. Have you seen the Cleveland Browns play football? I mean, not do nothing but break your heart. I think that's it. I mean, it's just been this. Cleveland was booming during the old industrial age in the last 30 or 40 years. Like the jobs left, and then chronic poverty. And to me, the tragedy of the whole thing is like you have the Cleveland Clinic. Like this is the greatest, most world-class healthcare facility in Cleveland, and across the street is the poorest, most economically depressed area of that same city. I mean, that in a nutshell illustrates the problem in the United States. And so I just think these economic issues over the last 30 or 40 years, lack of upward mobility. People think in the United States are like, well, the American dream, upward mobility. We rank like 30th in industrialized countries for your ability to be born poor or lower middle class and like work your way up because the opportunities just aren't there like they used to be.
Now,
So is the
Charlamagne also
American
said,
dream an illusion?
For a lot of people, and that path forward is not there for a lot of people. And then you get stuck, and then decade after decade, and it becomes concentrated. And that's what you're seeing in places like Cleveland. But it's really happening everywhere. It's happening in Cleveland. It's also happening down the Ohio River. It's happening in New York, but it's also happening in Western New York. So it's not like unique, and it's not black white. It's like there's poor, and there's people who top 1%, 5%. And I think what we got to start thinking about is like that group of 5 or 10% of people in the country, it's just going to get worse, because it's going to be like they have access to good health care, they have broadband, access to technology, access to cool stuff, education, the whole 9 yards, when everyone else isn't. So they're sicker, less educated, and that's just going to grow over time. That's a recipe for disaster for the country.
Now, Charlamagne also mentioned when you walked in here that he felt that you should be the next president of the United States.
Well, one day I think he should be president. I don't see why nobody's not challenging right now. I think next year is a great time to challenge President Biden. Or any, personally.
What's your thoughts on it? In the future, would you possibly running for president?
I don't know. I did it for 20 years. I'm 6 months out for first time in really my adult life being out of politics, and
you kind of like it.
I like it. I mean, we got my kid. I get to hang out with my kids. I got a 9-year-old. I'm coaching his flag football team. I like getting them into basketball. Took them to like Mark Price, who used to play for the Cavs a bunch of years back when they were good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he did a camp in Ohio, and I took Brady. I love this shit. This is great, man. So right now, no, but that's why we the people, I still want to be engaged. I still want to try to help. I feel like I got good ideas. I'm only 50 years old, and in this political environment, I'm like the newbie at 50.
Like you're young, and you get it. I was even going to ask you, as a former elected official, how do you feel when you see the cognitive decline of other elected officials, whether it's Mitch McConnell, whether it's Senator Dianne Feinstein, whether it's the president, Joe Biden? Like, what do you feel when you see that?
I'm frustrated, honestly, and I've been saying probably for the last 6-7 years that especially the Democratic Party, but clearly it's across the board, we need generational change. Like the new ideas we're talking about, like
Shrooms,
those are
weed, meditation,
right?
We're all doing that now.
Those are the solutions to our problems. And like you try to talk to an 80-year-old leader about psilocybin and mushrooms, and they're like, oh, those are like war on drug shit, and you're like, no, it's like this has been researched, like we have it, and so the conversations become very difficult because I just think there's just a lack of understanding there generationally, and I think that's part of the problem. And the fact that our culture, and that's why, like, politics is downstream of culture. I tell people all the time, like, President Kennedy was a product of the greatest generation. Like, these people went to war, survived the Depression, they knew their role in the world, were proud to be Americans, like, worked hard, and then they produced a leader like that who at one point gave the civil rights address from the Oval Office saying, you can't fight for freedom abroad if everyone's not free here. Right. Like, had the balls to do that stuff, right. You know what I mean? So I think, like, our culture now, because it's so toxic, is just the old leaders are just hanging on. It's not dynamic. We're not producing young leaders who are talking about, we're producing them, they just can't get any oxygen. Like, there's no way to, because the systems have become so narrowed. And so it's frustrating because I think we're not solving the problems. There aren't new ideas. And I've always been the kind of guy, like, I thought politics was about ideas. I thought it was about, you have your ideas, I have my ideas, let's fight it out in the public discourse. I'm going to talk about, shrooms and weed and meditation, and like that now has a lot of science behind it. Those are good ideas. How do we invest into communities and have like creative economic development initiatives that can help us rebuild the middle class, help us reinvest back in Cleveland, not just in the Cleveland Clinic, but on the other side of the street? How do we get good, healthy food into, urban agriculture? You can't look at the diets of like most people and say like this is a recipe for success. Like the industrial food system, it's junk, it's fake food, and then we give it to our kids, and then now half the country has diabetes or pre-diabetes, and everyone's complaining about healthcare costs. We got to move it to the front end. We don't even have that conversation in the United States. And so to me, it's like, how do you get fresh food like back to the fundamentals? You guys, played sports growing up and all that. I always remember this, and I think about it now probably more than I should, but we would have some success as a team. And it could be basketball, it could be football. And we'd start winning some games, and all of a sudden we'd hit a little funk. We'd lose, maybe lose again. And I always remember both coaches, both sports, we'd come back on a Monday, and it wouldn't be the sophisticated offense that we were growing into. We'd go back to the fundamentals. Be like dribbling, passing, foul shots, play defense. Like, we're going to spend another couple days reconnecting to the fundamentals. I think we need to do that as a country. Like, we need to talk about the food we're eating. We need to talk about kids. I just read a thing, I just tweeted out about kids don't play anymore. There's no play. There's like screen time, and you're in the house. Like, and how your brain develops and how your stress level goes down when you're out playing with other people, and you learn how to risk assessments and all this other stuff. Same thing with quiet time. Like, there's no quiet time for anybody anymore. Like, when do you have time when the phone's not on, when you actually, how do we like build those things in? Our schools are the same thing. Everyone's got to go to college. Well, how about the trades? Like, we have a gap in who can go build stuff in the United States. And so now you have this huge gap, and people got college debt, and they drop out after a year or two because we got rid of shop class. Right. We got rid of home economics. Like, all of these little things. So I think it's like, get back to the fundamentals. Let's start blocking and tackling again as a country. And I think if we do that, I think there's a connection there. And that's really what We the People is about, in our first video, we want to recapture the American spirit, like that optimism that we've always had in spite of like what was before our eyes. It was like, we can do better. And we've lost that optimism. And I think that's why, people feel so crappy.
You mentioned President Kennedy, and that's so interesting because he did give that address, from the White House, and it makes you think, is that why he got killed? And is that why people are afraid to make those kind of bold stands, because something like that could happen?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, our country is, the assassinations, especially in the 60s that happened, were always people really challenging the status quo. And I think, I don't know if there's A to B to C link, but I think there are leaders who challenge us so much, it scares the shit out of people. And so then, whatever happens, all the different theories. But I think there is a fear to be bold anymore. Because
people don't connect JFK to the civil rights movement, but they should.
Yeah.
When you look at all the civil rights leaders who got assassinated, I got to put JFK in there. He led that charge in a lot of ways.
100%. I mean, when you look at Bobby Kennedy's train, with the black folks on one side of the track and the white folks on the other side of the track, and all in mourning, that was kind of, downstream because him and his brother took that kind of stand that they did. And I know there's a lot of, historical anecdotes about he didn't do it fast enough. He didn't come. We had a president sit at the White House in the Oval Office and say what he said. Pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. Guy living his values, I mean, regardless of all the other stuff that was going on, but he lived his values.
Now, can you talk more about the extreme majority? Because I feel like I'm in the extreme majority. I probably
exhausted majority.
Exhausted majority.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I did CNN last night, and I'm here with my niece Ashley, who works with me, and we're sitting in the green room watching the show I'm going to go on at 10:50, and so from 10 to 10:50, I'm watching, which I really don't watch political talk anymore. And I looked at Ashley, and I was like, I'm exhausted. Like you're just sitting there watching. It was like I'm just sitting on a couch. I'm not doing anything, and I'm absolutely exhausted listening about Trump and all this stuff. And I just feel like, and I'm worried that the good people are going to check out, and the extreme people are going to stay in and be rabid and continue to drive the conversation. Like, there is no way that the vast majority of the people in this country support an insurrection against the government. There's no way. So how are these polls like 50-50 among registered voters? It's because, people aren't, we've had record number, but there's a lot of people that still don't vote. And there's a lot of people that just go and vote, and that's it. And what we want to do is try to get like a renewed view of civic engagement. Like, it starts with the citizens. We've tried to like outsource all this stuff to Washington, D.C., and Obama's going to take care of it, or Trump's going to take care of it, or Biden will do this, and then you get mad when they don't do. It's about us. And that's why, going back to President Kennedy, is like the Peace Corps, Vista. It was like, no, it's not me, it's us. And we're going to give you the path forward to help the country. And that's why I think one of the things we need in the country is national service. Some form of everyone has to get off their rear end and go help. I don't care if you're painting a swing. I don't care if you're volunteering for it. Like, you have to be engaged. And you know what's going to happen? You're going to meet somebody that doesn't look like you, not from the same neighborhood as you, different upbringing than you, and you're going to start building those connections because we're all Americans. We're not Democrats and Republicans. We're Americans. And if we can figure that out, I think we can pop ourselves out of this.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's what's so scary about 2024. People act like Trump can't win. I'm like, I believe he still could, because Democrats have to be energized to go, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't think we're necessarily going to be energized over the Biden-Harris ticket, but Republicans are going to show up, and they're going to show up in large numbers regardless, and just vote. And I think that voter apathy is just as dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it's not showing up is giving the other side more power.
That's right.
And that's what kind of happens. I mean, that's what happened in our Senate race in Ohio. Like, our Democrats in off-year elections, yet they don't show up. Like, but Republicans, every election, they show up. It's like, just get the herd, and they all go out and they vote. And it's impressive. And us, in Wisconsin Senate race, my Senate race, it wasn't like we got 400,000 voters in Ohio that voted for me and voted for the Republican governor. Like, we got the crossover vote that we needed to get in a place like Ohio, but our base votes didn't show up at the level. They showed up, they voted for me, but not at the level we needed them to. And I just think it's not, and it's the other thing. I think like a unsophisticated way of looking at this is like, oh, we got to register more people to vote. Voting is an extension of someone being connected to their community, right? If I feel connected, if I feel vested into my community, an extension of that is I'm going to go vote for the leaders, mayor, council, Congress, Senate, whatever. If you don't feel connected to your community, what do you care? Doesn't matter. And that's what we hear a lot. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who I vote for. And I don't think that's true at all, but I think that's the general sentiment. And we got to fix it, guys, because I think if we keep going down this track, like, you just project this out another 10 years. Like, my youngest kid's 9. He's 19. 10 years from now, he's 29, and I'm 70. Like, I don't like the trajectory that we're on right now.
What do you think Democrats are getting?
Guys, I got to run. I got a flight.
Okay, good.
So, pleasure seeing you.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you later.
Yeah.
I got a few more questions.
Appreciate it. Yeah, sure.
What do you think Democrats are getting wrong? What do you think Democrats are getting right?
I think that we need. I think what we got right, I think, was the reindustrialization of the country. I think the Inflation Reduction Act, I think the infrastructure bill, I think the CHIPS Act, which is helping us reshore chip manufacturing. Like, the reindustrialization piece absolutely got right. I think that we lack any ideas on some of the other stuff that we've already talked about. Like, we should be grabbing these healing modalities. We should be grabbing food as medicine. We should be grabbing these things and pushing them into the poorest communities in our country and saying we have a new agenda for empowerment, economic empowerment, health empowerment for every citizen, whether you're a black kid in Cleveland or you're a white kid living in Appalachia. These programs are going to be for all of us. And I think we've done a bad job. Like sometimes it's like Democrats are always picking a group. We're going to be with this group, and then we're going to be with this group, and they think come election time you can have like 10 different groups that you're going to be all for. Let's be for everybody. Like let's have things that, regardless, like Medicare, it's for everybody. That's why I was successful. Social Security, everybody gets it. Everybody participates in the program, So like we need things that are going to help everybody, especially when the vast majority of the people in the country are working hard and not getting ahead or working poor. Like, so if you're helping everybody, I'm not saying help the top, 1-2%. They're doing pretty good on their own. But how do we help everybody? And breaking up the concentration of wealth, pharmaceutical industry, big tech, like breaking that shit up is going to benefit everybody in the long run.
What do you think Republicans are getting wrong, and what do you think Republicans are getting right?
I think they get right from their messaging. It's not as clear now, but the answers aren't in Washington. The answers are in communities. The answers are with individuals. I think like there's no reason Democrats shouldn't agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Clearly the answers aren't all in Washington, D.C. because it disempowers people. And like I said, you can outsource your issues to Washington and then check out. Clearly what they get wrong, no one has a spine to like take on the insurrectionists. Like that's insane that there's certain red lines that you should say, no, I'm not going to support you anymore, which is why the Liz Cheneys of the world, even though like you don't agree with them on like 80% of things, you got to honor their courage for like, no, you can't support an insurrection for the United States. No, you can't lie 36,000 times to the American people as president. No, you can't steal secret documents and then try to cover it up. Like you're not allowed to do that. And so like to watch like the Kevin McCarthy's of the world with no spine, no guts, like can't stand up to anybody. I think that's just if Trump would win again, that would be the demise of the country, I think.
The country and democracy as we know it?
I think so. I mean, he gets the levers of power. You think he won't hire an attorney general that would just go?
It's gonna be a revenge tour.
Holy cow! Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Do you regret leaving your seat to run for Senate?
No. I was excited about it. I thought it was a good opportunity to try to do more. You get in public service, you want to try to do as much as you possibly can at the highest level you possibly can do it. And so, no, not at all.
How do you feel about the job that J.D. Vance is doing?
I honestly, really haven't paid attention.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really, haven't. I've like kind of not checked out, but like I have like focused on like what I want to do with We the People, my other work, my family, coaching my kid, that kind of thing. So I've been focused on that.
Well, speaking of not paying attention, do you think people have not been paying attention to the Ohio train derailment like they should have?
Yeah.
I just read the other day that there's still people being affected from the pollution months later.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, JD has like worked with Sherrod Brown on the train derailment, so I have paid attention to that. I haven't completely checked out, but yeah, I mean, I think again, it's like for years, President Obama, others were trying to get these trains regulated that are carrying hazardous materials that are, could pose a real danger to communities. And again, the big, powerful kind of corporate interest put the kibosh on it. And next thing you know, here's a poor community in Eastern Ohio that's absolutely screwed. Like, who's going to go buy a house now down there? Who's going to say we want to start a business there? And I just feel so bad. And fortunately, I think JD and Sherrod Brown are trying their best to get as much attention on that as possible.
Everything you're doing challenges capitalism, right? Whether it's introducing shrooms and mushrooms, whether it's saying, hey, we need to lay off these processed foods. Can you actually win a big national election challenging these corporations in that way?
Well, if you have the coalition of people on the ground, and I think part of what we want to do for We the People is let these people, like the vets, for example, who have been healed by the psilocybin, right? The MAPS group. There's thousands. They did a conference in Denver a couple weeks ago, 12,000 people. The governor of Colorado spoke at the conference. Like it's getting momentum. That's a whole network of people, right? You look at the food as medicine. You know, my buddy Mark Hyman, he's been a New York Times bestseller. He wrote a book called Food Fix. He's very much into this food as medicine, where we can just heal ourselves, reverse diabetes by changing our diets without all this medication and give them a bunch of money to the pharmaceutical industry that just manages it for you. You actually can heal yourself. That's millions of people across the country. You talk about mindfulness, transcendental meditation, yoga, like it's 50, 60, 70 million people in the country do this kind of things. Yoga studios popping up everywhere, right? Like what I want to do with We the People is for all of these groups to see each other as allies. Then you start to build a new politics, because when you look at it, the mindset's the same, right? Whether if you're for cannabinoids for addiction, if you're for psilocybin for healing post-traumatic stress for vets, if you're for seeing the problems with the industrial food system, you have the same mindset. You have a change mindset. You know things aren't working, and you have an idea. I need them, and we need them to all see each other as allies. And at We the People, we want to build that coalition, and hopefully one day that will shift the culture. And as I said, politics is downstream of culture. Culture shifts, politics will shift.
How do folks support We the People, man?
Go to wethepeople250.us and check us out. We got videos and some really compelling content. We're gonna take on the MAGA movement with some really compelling content. So stay tuned. That's going to be fun to do. And then we're going to build this other thing out. And we want a We the People representative in all 3,142 counties in the country. Like, that's my goal. Let's go big. We're going to do concerts. We're going to try to raise some money for these different groups, bring attention. So yeah, go sign up, be a part of what we're doing. It's going to be the most fun political organization in the country. There's a very low bar there, Charlamagne. There's a very low bar, but we want to have fun. We want joy. Like that. It's like we're living in a joyless, society now, and it's like we want joy, we want happiness, we want people to like have fun, and also participate. And I think that level of service, opening your heart, giving, using your time and talents to help others. There's joy in that. There's joy in that. So
I personally think Tim Ryan should be president of the United States of America one day, man. Your ideas, your values, your beliefs, I feel like that's what we need in politics right now.
Appreciate that, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That means a lot.
My guy, Tim Ryan, it's The Breakfast Club.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.